Kent Hughes and the Montreal Canadiens just won the biggest trade of the offseason, and there may be more trades to come. I'll discuss this and much more coming up on this episode of Hattrick HQ. Hi, I'm your host, Casey, and welcome back to Hattrick HQ. That said, let's get right into the first topic of this video, which is, this blockbuster trade was a huge win for the Habs. Of course, if you've been in tune with the NHL news recently, you would have seen that there was a huge three-team trade between the Sharks, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Montreal Canadiens. Obviously, the big name moving out of the San Jose Sharks to the Pittsburgh Penguins was Erik Karlsson. But Montreal had a sneaky win in this trade. As we look at the graphic here, Pittsburgh acquires Mike Hoffman and Rem Pitlick from the Montreal Canadiens, and the Montreal Canadiens acquire Jeff Petry, Casey DeSmith, Nathan Legare, and second-round pick for 2025. And yes, this was a huge win for the Habs, getting back a solid known defenseman in Montreal in Jeff Petry, and getting a solid backup potential starter of Casey DeSmith for the contracts of Mike Hoffman as well as Rem Pitlick. Two players who probably were going to follow the Montreal Canadiens 12 this year, their 12 forwards. But we'll get right into this article written by The Athletic talking about how big this trade was for the Montreal Canadiens. They write, the Canadiens were desperate to create room for their young players at forward, and this trade accomplishes that. Pitlick was not going to make the club out of camp, and frankly, there was a chance Hoffman wouldn't have either. With the Penguins retaining 25% of Petry's contract, leaving $4.6875 million for Montreal, the likelihood that DeSmith's $1.8 million is either partially buried in the AHL or lost on waivers, and Legare's entry-level contract also buried. The Canadiens basically only added $187,500 in salary with Hoffman's $4.5 million gone and no salary retention. They can now either flip Petry and retain half his salary to make him more attractive, or keep him and shore up the right side of their defense. It is very similar to how the Canadiens viewed acquiring Evgeny Dadonov last summer in the Shea Weber trade. A potentially useful player, and if not a potential trade chip. I think the Canadiens would be fine keeping Petry, but they would rather move him, seeing as he asked to be traded out of Montreal last year. Still, if a trade doesn't materialize, I think both sides would be fine with this. And they also go on to say in this article that, ultimately, from Montreal's perspective, this was about creating space in the lineup, something that looked unlikely to happen at this late stage in the offseason. Somehow, they got a second-round pick out of it as well, and might get more if Petry can find his game back again in Montreal, where he performed very well once Martin St. Louis took over and was a much happier player overall, wrote Arpon Basu of The Athletic. And like I said, this is a massive win for Montreal. They get rid of that big Mike Hoffman contract that they've been trying to get rid of, and they get rid of a player in Rem Pitlick who probably wasn't going to make the lineup with Jake Evans at center, as well as Christian Dvorak when he comes back off injury. It's going to be a tough four centers to crack right now in Montreal. But with getting Petry back at only 4.6 in around 4.6 in salary cap is huge for Montreal, because they've struggled with their depth at the right-hand shot defenseman for a long time, picking up David Reinbacher in the draft this year, but obviously he's probably going to go back to school, and he might not play this year, even though we'd love to see him play in Montreal this season. But with Petry back, that's a top-line right-hand shot defenseman that you can play even for half the season if Montreal decides to do so. Because, if he goes back in Montreal and he's playing on the top line, maybe with Matheson or Caden Gooley, depending on whatever line Martin St. Louis decides to put him on, he can prove his worth in the league, prove how good of a defenseman he still is at 35, becoming 36, I believe, in December. I think this is a huge trade for Montreal that they definitely won. They got rid of two players who they definitely probably weren't going to make the lineup this year. I'm going to say definitely weren't going to make the lineup this year. And they've created space for their young guys to come up and develop this year, which is huge for them. because you want your young guns to develop so that down the road that Montreal can become contenders. And with this Jeff Petry trade, I think even if you do move him at the deadline or move him before the start of the season, you're still going to get decent pick return for sure, and you're going to get $4.6 million, or if they retain 50%, $2.5 million, or $2.2 million, sorry, off your salary cap, which is big for Montreal going into next offseason, where they may look to add a few role players to their lineup. But I'd like to hear what your guys' thoughts on this are. I think Kent Hughes took a huge win here in this trade. I think, Montreal's future is really bright, and I think freeing up the space for those young guys to come in and develop into the league is crucial for the team's success in the future. But with that said, let's get right into the second topic of this video, which is more trades may be coming before the start of the season. And yes, a lot of people are speculating, me as well, that the Montreal Canadiens may look to move maybe Casey DeSmith or Jeff Petry, Jake Allen maybe, before the start of the season. Because right now, Montreal's goaltending situation is kind of up in the air. Because, yes, they can ride a two-goalie tandem in Allen and Casey DeSmith, but you have a guy like Caden Primo who you can't bury down in the minors. He has to clear waivers, and if he has to clear waivers, he's not going to be in Montreal, because I feel like a team will pick him up on waivers for sure. A good young goaltending prospect that you don't want to lose. So Montreal's kind of in a sticky situation right now with their goaltending that they need to move one of these guys. And I feel like it's not going to be Samuel Montembeault, just the way he's proven himself in Montreal so far last season. And he's a young goaltender that, he could develop into maybe a fringe starter or even the starter potential for Montreal. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because since this big trade happened a couple days ago, there hasn't been any talk to the media at all from Kent Hughes or from Jeff Petry, which is very interesting to me. I feel like every time there's a trade or a signing, Montreal has a press conference, and they talk to the media and explain their thought process behind the whole trade. You know how it is, the common press conference, all the press get together and ask all their questions that they want to know. So this is very, very interesting, like I said, because you don't know what's going through Montreal's office right now, or their GM in Kent Hughes. They're probably working on another deal right now, which they don't want to release like a statement on the trades until they finalize the trade that just happened, because they're probably going to move one of these pieces or one of their existing pieces again before the start of the season. So it'll be really interesting to see how this all unfolds in the coming weeks. I think we will see another Montreal Canadiens trade coming up in the very near future, whether it's Jeff Petry leaving or the goaltenders of Jake Allen or Casey DeSmith going back. But I don't think Kent Hughes used Casey DeSmith as a trade piece in this trade from Pittsburgh. I think he kind of wants him to be Montreal's backup this year. So we might see a Jake Allen trade, which I know a lot of Canadiens fans will be happy about. I know a lot of people weren't too pleased with Jake Allen's play last year. But myself, I thought Jake Allen played pretty solid. I just don't think he's, a 50-game goalie or anything like that. I think he's getting too up there in age for that right now. But, Jake Allen is a solid goaltender. But Montreal, like I said, Montreal's goaltending situation is really up in the air right now. But like I said, I'd love to see another trade by Kent Hughes, because this one he just pulled off was a masterclass. He just got back a solid defenseman that Montreal Canadiens fans loved. Probably not so much after he left because he requested a trade. But like you said, like Artem Basu said in this article, Jeff Petry played really well under Martin St. Louis. So maybe that's something that they're looking at. Maybe they're talking to Petry saying, hey, you want to try a few games out, try the first half of the season, and then if it's not working out for you, we can send you off to a contender at a very appealing contract with 50% retention or something like that. But it'll be, like I said, it'll be really interesting to see what unfolds here in the coming weeks. I'd like to hear what your guys' thoughts are on this down in the comment section below. Do you think Petry's on the move, or do you think DeSmith's on the move? Do you think Allen's on the move? It's going to be interesting to see. I think, if Petry is moved again before the season, I won't be dissatisfied. I think depending on who we get back or what we'll get back for that, I think with Petry gone, if we don't get another right-handed shot defenseman, it's not the end of the world, because we still have Davis Savard, Justin Barron, and Jonathan Kovacevic that can play in the right-handed shot defensive role. But it would be nice to see Petry back in a Montreal Canadiens uniform. One of my favorite players Montreal's had. Just a great right-handed shot that Montreal has been missing. So like I said, I'd like to hear what you guys think on this down in the comment section below. But I've been KC. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. We're trying to hit 100 subscribers before the season starts. We'd love to see that happen. And keep your stick on the ice.